Hi, welcome to another episode of Webcam Sessions. Today we're going to be talking about embellishments that are used with playing that are kind of unique to the ukulele and guitar and other stringed instruments. We're going to be talking about slides, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and bends. And these techniques are really unique. You don't really see them used on instruments where you're blowing into them like a trumpet or trombone, but they create a very similar effect that things like a voice and other instruments have. So really important ones to be able to open up your sound and to facilitate a lot of different types of tone when you're playing through a song. So let's go ahead and jump right in. And let's start with slides. Sliding can also be called slurring. In music, a slur is the act of not articulating two different notes. So if you were singing and you went da da, that would be articulating each note, da da, right? But if I were slurring, it'd be da, and that would bridge those two notes, and there you get a glimpse of why it is I don't sing while I play. So when we're playing the ukulele, typically speaking, when we're playing a note, we play the note, and when we play the next note, we're articulating it somehow, whether we're plucking it with our thumb or a different finger. We're going to be playing it two different times. A slide helps us slur those notes together to get this sort of sound. So let's go ahead and try this. Let's go ahead and take our ring finger on our playing hand and let's put it on the 3rd fret of the A string. And now with our strumming hand, we're going to just pluck the string with our thumb, that being the A string. Now, what we do for a slide is we're going to actually move our finger up to the 5th fret. And we want to do so while maintaining the tone. So this is a little tricky, but what we want to try to work on here is get a nice tone, maintain pressure with the finger, and try to drive that pressure in towards the 5th fret. If you release the tension at all and the pressure, you're going to notice the tone will go away very quickly. So we want to maintain that pressure with the finger as we do the slide. And that looks something like this. Now, one of the hardest things to do with a slide is to time it just right, because a lot of times we try to slide too much or we try to slide too little. If you do this or this, it's going to be pretty tough to get a good sound. So what you want to really practice is playing and trying to drive right into that 5th fret. And then you want to practice with each one of your fingers. Now, as you're doing this, at first it's very awkward just because it's new. It will get easier as you do it. Every time you do it, it gets you closer to being comfortable with it. But again, you want to maintain the pressure through the slide. And the way that I kind of think about it is I almost increase the pressure just a little bit with my finger as I make the slide. So that the moment that I'm at the new place that I'm sliding in towards, my finger's pushing a little bit harder than it was before. I find that helps drive the tone and gets me the sound that I'm looking for. And so work with it and you'll get it. It just takes some practice. And as you're working on it, what's really nice is try doing really big slides. Try going from like 3 to 7 and 3 to 10 and 3 to 12 because it's harder the further up the fretboard you go, but it's also really cool when you get it, 3 to 10. Sounds pretty good, unless you overshoot it, right? But the point is, work on slides, maintain that pressure. So the next technique we're going to work on after the slide is going to be the bend. And bending's a funny technique because there's a few different little notes to it. A bend is similar to a slide in that we go from one pitch to another without articulating it, but it's very different because we're actually adjusting the pitch through one fret. So normally when we do the slide, we're going from one note to another, but with a bend, we're actually physically moving the string to create a new pitch. Now, bends can really hurt yourself if you're not careful with it. And when I was first learning bends, I actually kind of hurt my hand a little bit because I was doing it so much. So let's go ahead and try it, and let's keep a couple important notes in mind. So go ahead and place your ring finger on the 5th fret of the A string. And here's the important note. Put your middle behind on the 4th and index behind on the 3rd. You're not actually going to be using these to play, you're just using them as reinforcement. Because when you're bending a string, it's all hands on deck. You want to make sure that you're bending with whatever fingers are behind as well. So we're going to play this note. And now what we're going to do is we're going to physically move the string upward. And we're going to emit force so that our fingers are going up, but still maintaining their contact with the string. It doesn't really matter if you hit another string as you do this. You want to try to kind of keep it off, but it will happen when you bend up enough. And we're just trying to get that bend. So we're going to play the note and do that bend upward. You'll notice the pitch will immediately change. Now, the trick to a bend is we can bend up and then go back down. Trick is maintaining that pressure on the string. And what's fun about bends is we can play it just once, go up and down. But we can also do it where we play it, bend up, hold it, play it again, and come back down. Now, one of the most important things about bends is what is the thumb doing behind? And this is where there's some variance. What you're noticing right now is I've got my thumb right here. You notice it's not from the underside, just because a lot of times I actually like to push my thumb down a little bit as I'm bending up. You can do it from underneath, it's just more difficult to get that good bend. But you also find players will grip the uke like this. And in an earlier webcam sessions where we talked about how to hold the ukulele, this is one of the things that we talked about. And check that out if you're confused with having your thumb come up and over versus underneath. But using that other technique that we worked on in that other sessions, a lot of times having the thumb up here will really help because it gives you this thing to kind of bend off of. It actually makes it easier on the strings. Players like Jimi Hendrix on the guitar would actually do this to create a really, simpler bend because you're omitting force in ways that work together as opposed to each other. So we can practice all these different ways, keeping in mind where the thumb is. And that's a bend, right? So a bend is a cool technique for that kind of electric guitar style sound, right? So now we're going to work on the two most important ones in my opinion, or at least the two hardest ones to actually do. The pull off and hammer on. As you see, I even mix them up as I'm talking about them. These two techniques are really used together, and a lot of times they're even written the same way. And if you look down here, you'll actually see the line that divides these two numbers. If it's just this nice little arc, it actually is implying to be a hammer-on or a pull-off, depending on if you're going up in the number or down. Sometimes you'll also see it say H/P for hammer-on, pull-off. So that's how you'll see it written in tabs. So they really are, brother-sister techniques, and we want to kind of approach them as such. So let's start with the hammer-on. And before we talk about the hammer-on, I'm going to talk about another musical instrument that I really like to compare this to, and that's a piano. Now, if you know how a piano works, it's pretty cool. It's actually, a piano is a stringed instrument. If you open it up, there are a bunch of strings inside. And when you press the key, there's a hammer that actually strikes the string to create the sound, right? Who'da thunk? It's really cool to look inside a piano if you haven't already. I highly suggest searching for it on YouTube or something because it's kind of mesmerizing. But when you push that key, it hammers on the string. And when we do our hammer-on technique, we want to think of this. Because when we do this, we're not just touching the string with our hammer-on, we're hammering it. We're using the tip of our finger as if it were a little bit of a hammerhead to get this sound. So let's go and learn the technique. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start on the 3rd fret of the A string with our index finger on our fretting hand here. We're going to play this note with our thumb, just like we were for the slide and everything else. And then we're going to try taking our ring finger and hammering it to the 5th fret of the A string. Now notice when I do this hammer, I'm not just touching the string, I'm actually using quite a bit of force, using the tip of the finger to get into that string to create an audible sound. This is one of the hardest techniques to learn on a ukulele because at first it might sound like this. And you're getting no tone, and the reason is because you want to make sure you're getting that hammer-like feel. And what I find really helps with this is having a little bit of a bend in that knuckle. If your finger's straight or recessed, it doesn't give you that hammer that you can get with your finger having just a little bit of a bend. And you're really using the tip of the finger. You want to be using, if you have any sort of callus there from playing, that's what we're really utilizing to be that little bit of a hammerhead to get that sound. Now, one interesting thing about the hammer-on is you can do them very, very quick. And you'll find that's a little bit easier because the tone is still sustaining at the moment of the hammer-on. But you can also do them more delayed. You'll notice that's going to be a little bit softer in terms of the tone just because the string is vibrating more and it's starting to decay in its tone. And that makes it even more important to do the correct technique with the hammer-on. So you'll notice the faster you do it, the easier it'll be. The slower you do it, the harder it will be. So you want to be practicing kind of both ways. And then you want to practice really doing it with every finger. And so we can practice doing it with our pinky. So one of my favorite things to do here is our middle finger on 5, doing our pinky to 7. You'll notice this is really quite tricky, but worth it to work on. You'll notice the pinky has a little bit of a bend there too, as it makes this motion not being straight to get that hammer-on like sound. So we can practice doing it with each kind of finger combination and try it all over the fretboard to get different results. The index finger doesn't do a hammer-on quite as common because there's nothing that can precede it, but it will occasionally do a hammer-on from an open string. So what you can do is try practicing, say, the open A, and then hammer on to 2. Same exact concept. We want to be a little bit of a hammerhead hitting the string, just like a piano hits its strings, right? So now the last technique here I think is the hardest, and that's a pull-off. And the pull-off has the most technique to it too, because what a pull-off really is a plucking of the string with your fretting hand. And this is where a lot of people don't quite do it right. So this is what a pull-off sounds like. Right? When you're doing that sort of pull-off type of sound, what happens is you essentially will play a note and you'll remove the finger to another note. Right? So let's try this with our ring finger on the 5th fret of the A. And let's go ahead and place already our index finger on the 3rd fret of the A string as well. So that's getting ready for this step. Now we're going to play the 5 and we're going to pull off to 3. Now here's the trick. If you're getting this sort of sound when you do pull-offs, the reason is you're taking it a little bit too literally. You're literally just pulling off your finger, which is exactly what the technique sounds like. And the act of just pulling off your finger, you'll notice the tone goes away very quickly. And the reason is when you look here, my finger's just coming off the string. There's nothing that's continuing the resonance of it. And that's what this is all about, continuing the resonance. So when we do the pull off, we want to play this string, and with our fretting hand, we want to actually physically pull the string downward with the finger that's doing the pull off and pluck the string with that finger as it comes off. So it will actually come downward and even a little bit inward to create that pull off sound. Pull offs are the hardest technique to do until you start doing it this way, and then it actually becomes the easiest technique with practice because it's the one that has the most tone coming from the technique itself. A slide, a bend, a hammer-on, those all kind of depend a little bit on the string resonating before. The hammer-on a little less so, but the pull-off really in its own right is the one that you can do after the note's even completely decayed and gone. So listen to this. If we do it really fast, sounds good, right? But listen how slow you can do it. The note completely died, and yet I still got a good pull-off sound just because I'm actually plucking the string with the finger as it goes. And what's fun is the hammer-on, which is the kind of brother-sister technique to it, we can use to actually facilitate them going back and forth. So without using my right hand at all, I can just practice going from 3 to 5. So I'll play once to start the hammer-on, and then I'll continue by doing hammer-on, pull-off, without even playing. Watch this. Pretty cool, right? And this is a lot of fun to kind of play with hammer-on pull-offs. We can try different things even with open strings because the techniques themselves actually continue the sound. Again, you'll notice my thumb changes positions depending on what I'm playing. If I'm just doing a very simple thing like this, I tend to have my thumb right squared behind. But if I'm using a lot of open strings and doing something like, you'll notice my thumb's coming up here to really allow me to get a good kind of torque angle, kind of a counter punch here where the thumb is pushing downward while the finger is pulling off. It lets my hand twist in a way that's more comfortable. So try out these techniques, see how you like them. Notice all the different tab symbols that went with each of them. So if you're ever looking at a piece of tablature, you can actually see what it looks like based on those. And if you're not familiar with reading tab, be sure to check out our earlier episode where we work on reading tab so that you can get comfortable with that as well. In our last lesson, we worked on an arrangement of Jingle Bell Rock for the holidays. So if you haven't checked that out already, please do. It's the episode right before this one. And as it is that time of year, we're still doing a special on my Ultimate Ukulele Strumming Course that actually comes with a finger-picking webinar as well. So it's a big bundle with a lot of different things. And the link to that's available right here. So please check that out. I'm really excited about doing these videos. I can't believe how many we've already made, and it's been a lot of fun, and I've got a lot more ideas. But that being said, I would love to hear what your ideas are for these, because what these sessions are about is trying to help people with things that they actually are having trouble with. And as I mentioned in my first episode, this video series is kind of a result of my private lessons that I give. I've actually been giving lessons through Skype and FaceTime and Google Hangouts and all that full time for over 4 years now. I've been really fortunate to be able to do it for a living. And these webcam sessions are just talking about the things that come up with a lot of different students very routinely. Hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, and bends are certainly one of those things. So if there's something that you're struggling with that you'd really like to see, please leave a comment below. Also, I hate being the guy to ask for that, but please leave a like as well. Every like and comment that we get actually helps these videos get more views, which helps get it to more people. And I want to keep making these for as long as I can. So every little bit there helps. So again, thank you so much. I'll see you next week for our next week's episode. And please, again, let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below. And have a wonderful week. Take it easy.